What if I told you that a man that lived 500 years ago discovered a secret to navigating our chaotic, modern world? That he found a way to break free from certainty, yes, certainty, that prison that we built around ourselves, and discovered freedom in doubt. Michel de Montaigne wasn't supposed to become one of history's greatest philosophers. Born in a wealthy family in 16th century France, he could have lived comfortable and forgettable life. Instead, he retreated to a tower and surrounded himself with books and began an experiment that would change human thought forever. Welcome to the art of doubt. I'm going to show you how Montaigne's radical approach to uncertainty can transform the way you think, make decisions, and find peace in a world obsessed with false certainty. Before we dive in deeply into Montaigne's thought, let me ask you this. When was the last time you admitted that you were completely wrong about something? When did you last say, "I didn't know," or "I don't understand that," and feel good about it? If you are like most people, those moments are rare, because we simply hate uncertainty. We despise doubt. And this obsession with being right about something is actually killing our ability to think clearly. Despite his profound influence on modern philosophy, Michel de Montaigne remains largely overlooked in popular discussions of philosophy, where names like Plato, Aristotle, Nietzsche, or Marcus Aurelius have become household names in those interested in wisdom, philosophical wisdom. Montaigne often languishes in relative obscurity. This oversight is nothing short of intellectual tragedy. Montaigne pioneered a particular form of writing, the essay, that we now take for granted. He developed a conversational and intimate style of writing that makes his philosophy very accessible, actually. And most importantly, he created a practical approach to wisdom that doesn't require abstract theories or complex philosophical systems. Because, everyone can write an essay about something. And perhaps that's precisely the reason why Montaigne is overlooked so much. Because his work defies categorization. He wasn't building grand philosophical systems like Kant or Hegel, although they are much later philosophers. He wasn't as dramatically provocative as Nietzsche, for example. Instead, he simply showed how an ordinary person can think clearly about their own life. Or perhaps he's overlooked because of his central insight that we should embrace doubt rather than certainty, because it runs counter to our natural desires of seeking clear answers, because our world rewards confident statements over thoughtful questions. Montaigne's humble approach can seem weak rather than wise. Michel de Montaigne was born in 1533, Bordeaux, France, the son of a wealthy merchant. He received an unusual education for his time. His father hired a Latin tutor who spoke to young Michel exclusively in Latin from birth, making it his almost native language before French. This intellectual upbringing set the stage for a mind that would question everything. After working as a magistrate and serving in local government, Montaigne experienced what we might today call a midlife crisis. At 38, he retired from public life, converted the tower of his family estate into a library with over 1,000 books, and began writing what he called essay, a word that in French means attempts or trials. These essays weren't meant to be definitive statements about their subjects. They were explorations, experiments in thought. Montaigne wrote about everything: death, friendship, thumps, coaches, smells. Nothing was too grand or too trivial for his curious mind. But what made these writings revolutionary was his approach. Unlike philosophers before him, who claimed to have discovered ultimate truths, Montaigne constantly questioned himself. As he famously wrote, "What do I know?" This phrase became the cornerstone of his philosophy. In those simple words, Montaigne challenged centuries of intellectual arrogance. Montaigne's approach to uncertainty offers an antidote to the poison of dogmatism that infects our modern discourse. Think about our world today. Social media feeds us information that confirms what we already believe. News outlets cater to our political preferences. Algorithms trap us in bubbles where our views are never challenged. We are becoming increasingly certain of our opinions while growing increasingly wrong about reality. Montaigne would recognize the danger immediately. He lived during the French wars of religion, brutal conflicts between Catholics and Protestants, where both sides were absolutely certain that they were right. Montaigne watched as certainty lead to massacre after massacre, because those were very bloody wars. Many people have died. He saw firsthand how the conviction of being right could justify terrible violence, even in the name of a religion that is almost the same religion as the religion of your opponent. It's putting a very high price on one's conjectures to have someone roasted alive on their account, he wrote. This might be the most important lesson Montaigne has for our polarized age. Certainty kills, doubt saves. In an era of fake news, conspiracy theories, and algorithmic reality bubbles, Montaigne's skepticism isn't just helpful, it's essential. His approach provides a framework for navigating our post-truth world without falling into either naive acceptance or cynical dismissal of all claimed truths. Unlike many philosophers who dealt with abstract theories, Montaigne created a deeply practical philosophy. He wasn't interested in metaphysical speculations for their own sake. He wanted to know how to live well in an uncertain world. His philosophy wasn't meant to be admired from a distance. It was meant to be used. Let's explore the 4 key principles of Montaigne's practical philosophy. Firstly, accept the limitations of human knowledge. Montaigne understood something that modern neuroscience has confirmed. Our minds are flawed instruments. Our memories distort the past. Our perceptions filter reality. Our reasoning is biased by our desires. The greater part of the world's troubles are due to questions of grammar, Montaigne observed. Recognizing how language itself shapes and limits our understanding, he realized that most intellectual conflicts arise from our failure to recognize how little we truly know. When you catch yourself being absolutely certain about complex issues, politics, economics, or human behavior, remember Montaigne's humility. Ask yourself, what do I know? And the honest answer is usually far less than I think. Embrace self-observation without self-deception. Montaigne didn't just question the world, he questioned himself with brutal honesty. His essays catalog his contradictions, his weaknesses, and his changing opinions. I study myself more than any other subject, he wrote. That's my metaphysics. That is my physics. This radical self-examination wasn't self-absorption. It was a pathway to understanding the human condition. By studying himself without judgment, Montaigne discovered the universal in the personal. In our era of carefully curated social media personas, Montaigne's honesty is revolutionary. He admitted when he was afraid, when he was wrong, when he was pity. He described his body in unsparing detail. He documented his changing opinions without embarrassment. Try this Montaigne-inspired exercise. Write down your strongest political opinion. Now write the strongest argument against that view. And not a so-called strawman, but the most compelling counter-argument you can imagine. And if you can't imagine that, research for such argument. Because if you can't imagine it, you don't understand that issue as well as you think. Find freedom in uncertainty. For most people, doubt is uncomfortable, something to be eliminated. For Montaigne, doubt was liberating. By accepting the absolute certainty was impossible, he freed himself from the prison of dogmatism. It's good to have a dragging rein on judgment, he wrote. By keeping his mind flexible, Montaigne could consider perspectives that others rejected outright. He could change mind without shame. He could hold contradictory beliefs simultaneously. This thought doesn't mean abandoning all conviction. Instead, it means holding your beliefs with an open hand and not a squeezed fist. It means being willing to revise your views when new evidence emerges. It means understanding that certainty is sometimes an illusion, and a dangerous one at that. Find wisdom in the ordinary. While many philosophers looked for truth in grand abstractions, Montaigne found it in everyday life. He wrote about his cat, his horse rides, his digestive problems. He believed that profound insights could emerge from observing the mundane. The most beautiful lives, to my mind, are those that conform to the common human pattern, he wrote. Unlike philosophers who created elaborated systems and hierarchies, Montaigne embraced the messiness of our everyday existence. This appreciation for the everyday wasn't just philosophical, it was therapeutic. By finding meaning in small moments, Montaigne developed resilience against fortune's whims. He didn't need grand achievements or abstract ideas to live well. He found contentment in friendship, good conversation, and the pleasures of a curious mind. Montaigne didn't develop his practical philosophy in isolation. He was deeply versed in ancient wisdom, particularly Stoicism and Epicureanism, two philosophical schools that offered practical guides to living well. Yet what makes Montaigne unique is how he transformed these ancient traditions into something uniquely suited to his time and to ours. From the Stoic philosophers like Seneca, Epictetus, or Marcus Aurelius, Montaigne borrowed the emphasis on distinguishing between what we can and cannot control. His library walls were famously inscribed with Stoic maxims, and his essays frequently quote Seneca with approval. Like the Stoics, Montaigne believed that much of human suffering comes from our attempts to control uncontrollable. But Montaigne wasn't a strict Stoic, to be precise. He found the ideal of complete emotional detachment too rigid and too inhumane. This is where his appreciation for Epicureanism came into play. From Epicurus, Montaigne took the recognition that pleasure, especially simple pleasures like friendship, conversation, and the enjoyment of nature, was a legitimate part of a good life. The most manifest sign of wisdom is a constant happiness, Montaigne wrote, echoing Epicurean teachings on achieving tranquility through moderation rather through extremes. Montaigne didn't simply regurgitate ancient wisdom. He tested these philosophies against his own experience, accepting what worked and rejecting what didn't. He was pragmatic, not dogmatic. He created a uniquely balanced approach that took the best elements from competing schools of thought, while avoiding their excesses. This willingness to learn from different traditions, while maintaining independence of thought, makes Montaigne a model for our engagement with philosophical ideas. He showed us that we can respect ancient wisdom without being bound by it, that we can be students of philosophy without becoming prisoners of any single philosophical system. Okay, how we can use Montaigne's thought in our everyday life. Montaigne's skepticism wasn't paralytic, it was deeply pragmatic. Montaigne didn't advocate endless questioning that leads nowhere. Instead, he promoted a balanced approach. Question everything, but live accordingly to the best provisional answers you can find. Accept that your knowledge is incomplete, but act on what you know while remaining open to correction. Okay, how we can use it then? For example, in a political discourse. Instead of viewing opposing viewpoints as evil or stupid, Montaigne approach acknowledges the limitations of all political theories and seeks common ground. Personal development. Rather than chasing self-improvement trends that promise certainty, Montaigne would encourage experimental, individualized approaches to growth. Media consumption. Montaigne would advise skepticism toward any source claiming to have the complete truth, while remaining open to insights from diverse perspectives. Mental health. His emphasis on self-acceptance and the ordinary pleasures of life offers an antidote to perfectionism and status anxiety. What would Montaigne make of our modern world? I think he would be simultaneously horrified and fascinated. Horrified by our polarization, our algorithmic echo chambers, our addiction to outrage, by fascinated by our technology, our global connectivity, and our scientific advances, of course. And above all, I think he would urge us to approach our complex world with more humility and less certainty. He would remind us that the people we disagree with are not monsters but humans too, as complex and contradictory as ourselves. He would encourage us to be less impressed by those who never doubt and more trusting of those who acknowledge the limits of their knowledge. The practical relevance of Montaigne's philosophy to our 21st century problems cannot be overstated. In an age where artificial intelligence claims to know us better than we know ourselves, Montaigne's skepticism is a necessary counterweight. In a time of wars, climate crisis, pandemic threats, and geopolitical instability, his ability to face uncertainty without panic, offers a model of resilience, perhaps most importantly. In an era where attention is the most precious resource, Montaigne's focus on the quality of our inner life rather than external validation provides a path to a genuine fulfillment. As he wrote, "The greatest thing in the world is to know how to belong to oneself. Learning to live well means learning to die well." Montaigne was obsessed with death, but not out of morbidity. He believed that confronting mortality was necessary for living authentically. To practice death is to practice freedom. A man who has learned how to die has unlearned how to be a slave. By accepting the uncertainty of life and the certainty of death, Montaigne found a path to genuine freedom. Freedom from dogma, from pretense, from the tyranny of public opinion. This brings us full circle to the question we began with. How do we find wisdom in an age of information overload and tribal certainty? Montaigne's answer would be simple. Question everything, especially yourself. Embrace doubt not as a weakness, but as a strength. Find freedom in uncertainty. The most profound aspect of Montaigne's philosophy is that it never becomes outdated. While specific beliefs and theories rise and fall, practice of thoughtful mind remains eternally relevant. In this sense, Montaigne offers not only philosophy, but a method, a way of engaging with the world that adapts to any circumstances. If you find value in Montaigne's approach to life and wisdom, check this video of mine, where I explore fully ancient philosophy of Stoicism, mainly the version of Marcus Aurelius, so one of the greatest Stoics ever. And they too offer a powerful toolkit for navigating our modern world. Stoics understood that the true freedom comes from not controlling the world, but from mastering our responses to it. Stay curious and stay doubtful, but do not doubt in your own strength. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you can leave me a like, a comment, a subscription perhaps. That's all for today. Goodbye.